The kitchen light kept flickering, one of those dull, tired bulbs that struggles just enough to make the whole room feel colder than it actually is. Bonnie stood there barefoot on the tile floor, fingers still damp from washing dishes, when her phone buzzed once. Just once. Not the rapid vibration of a call, not the double ping of a friend sending a meme. Just a single sharp vibration, like a warning. She wiped her hands on a towel and glanced down, a text from her father. At first, her brain didn't even register the words. It was too abrupt, too surgical, too soulless to process quickly. But as the kitchen light flickered again, the screen glowed brighter, almost spotlighting the message that would fracture everything. I disown you. Talk to my lawyer. No explanation. No hesitation. No emotion. Just a sentence carved like a blade. Bonnie stared at the screen. The phone didn't vibrate again. No follow-up message. No accidental send. The stillness of it, of everything around her, made the words feel heavier. They pressed against her chest like a physical weight. Most people would crumble, panic, pull back, demand clarity, beg. Bonnie did none of those things. She inhaled once, slowly, deliberately, letting the cold air settle in her lungs. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard for only a second before she typed the most unexpected response she could give to a man trying to punish her. Okay. No period. No emotion. No fight. Just acceptance. Or at least the kind he would interpret as defeat. She locked her phone and set it down on the counter. Didn't buzz again. Her father's silence was just as loud as the message itself. But Bonnie wasn't frozen. She wasn't shattered. She wasn't even surprised. Instead, she walked to the small wooden table in the corner of the kitchen, pulled out her chair and opened her laptop. The screen lit up the room brighter than the struggling kitchen bulb ever could. She clicked into a folder she had created 3 days earlier, a folder she hadn't meant to open until later, but her father had pushed the timeline forward for her. The plan had already begun forming in the back of her mind. Not out of anger. Not out of spite. Out of precision. If Harold wanted to play legal games, then Bonnie would show him what real strategy looked like. Quietly, methodically, she began typing, and as she did, one question hovered over everything like a storm cloud waiting to split open. But what led to this moment? And why was my father so quick to cut me off? The answer lies in a video I received just days before. A video that exposed a truth so devastating, it would bring down everything they built on my back. Let me take you back to where this all started. Bonnie grew up in a house where even the air felt monitored. The Glendale home looked normal from the outside. Peach-colored siding, a trimmed lawn, a welcome mat that lied. But inside, everything was controlled. The smell of burnt coffee was permanent, clinging to the curtains like it was part of the decor. Marilyn insisted it was European roast. But everyone knew it was just Harold brewing it past the point of reason and refusing to admit he'd burned it. That was the house where Bonnie learned silence. Where she learned timing. Where she learned the difference between peace and appeasement. Harold, her father, ruled their world without raising his voice. He didn't need to. His disapproval was enough to freeze the room, enough to make Marilyn stand straighter, enough to make Bonnie swallow her words. He liked order, compliance, gratitude, and above all loyalty. So long as it benefited him, Marilyn, the stepmother with the perfect blowout and the hollow smile, handled the surface-level presentation. She curated the image. The family photos with coordinated outfits, the spotless counters before guests came over, the annual Christmas cards that pretended they were closer than they'd ever been. She didn't just play pretend, she lived in it. Then there was Evan, the golden child, the miracle son, the boy who could do no wrong, even when he absolutely did. Harold's pride, Marilyn's joy, and the center of a universe Bonnie never belonged in. Family roles weren't spoken. They were assigned like permanent job titles. Evan was the winner. Bonnie was the scapegoat. And Marilyn made sure it stayed that way. Any bad grade, any forgotten chore, any tension in the house, it was always Bonnie's fault. Evan crashed the car. Bonnie should have reminded him to slow down. Marilyn overdrew the checking account. Bonnie should have double-checked her math. Harold lost a contract. Bonnie must have distracted him. The pattern didn't change when Bonnie became an adult. It only grew sharper, heavier, more punishing. She became the buffer. Fixer. The one who absorbed every mistake so the family image could stay intact. 4 years ago, the cycle locked in place. Bonnie was eating lunch at her office when her phone lit up with a call from Harold, something he rarely did unless he needed something. When she answered, he was crying. Actual tears. She hadn't heard him sound like that since her grandmother died. The house was in foreclosure, he said. The mortgage was behind. Marilyn was crumbling. Evan was distraught. They might lose everything. He told her she was the only one responsible enough to help. IT was supposed to be a one-time fix. But one-time fixes have a way of becoming lifelong obligations when you're the family scapegoat. Mortgage. Utilities. 2 medical emergencies. Evan's DUI settlement that they swore her not to mention. Month after month, Bonnie poured money into a house that had never felt like home. Ironically, she was an auditor, paid to find financial inconsistencies, yet she couldn't balance the dysfunction draining her from the inside. She kept sending. She kept saving them. She kept shrinking. For 4 years I played this role perfectly. I sent money, I kept quiet, I made myself small. But then, everything changed when my Uncle Robert sent me a video he never meant for me to see. What was on that video didn't just explain my father's text. It set my entire world on fire. The video came on a Thursday night, one of those quiet evenings where the world feels paused. Bonnie had been grading spreadsheets when her phone buzzed with a text from a name she hadn't seen in months. Uncle Robert. No greeting. No explanation. Just a sentence and an attachment. You deserved to know. Video file. 47 seconds. No caption. No context. Bonnie felt her stomach twist, but she tapped it open anyway. The first thing she saw was familiar. The old dining table in the Glendale house, the one she'd spent her childhood polishing before guests arrived. The heavy wooden edges, the floral runner Marilyn insisted was classy, and above it, the bright chandelier that made every scratch on the table shine. The scene was relaxed, comfortable. Too comfortable. Harold sat at the head of the table, swirling whiskey in his glass like he was celebrating something. Marilyn leaned back in her chair, legs crossed, perfect as always. Evan lounged with his chair tilted on 2 legs, grinning. They didn't look stressed. They didn't look worried. They didn't look like a family on the verge of foreclosure. Harold lifted his glass, and his voice came through the speaker. Casual, amused, cruel. She's not a daughter, he said, chuckling. She's a walking ATM. The room erupted. Real laughter. Deep laughter. The kind that comes from the stomach. The kind people share when they feel safe and understood. Marilyn wiped a tear from the corner of her eye as she caught her breath. Let her feel useful, she said. It keeps her from asking questions. Evan snorted. Please. He's pathetic. A grown woman being guilt-tripped by her own dad. It's embarrassing. More laughter. More ease, not one hint of shame. Then Harold stood up, lifting his glass higher as if performing some twisted family tradition. To my personal ATM, he declared. Long may she pay. The clinking glasses were sharp, crisp, confident, like a toast to a business deal sealed long ago. Someone whistled. Someone cheered. Someone slapped the table. They were certain of something. Bonnie would never see this. She would never hear what they really thought. She would never know the truth. Her fingers went numb. The phone slipped from her hand and hit the floor with a dull thud. IT didn't break, but something inside her did. This wasn't a moment of weakness. It wasn't frustration slipping out. It wasn't anger spoken in private. IT was a system. Designed. Practiced. Perfected. She picked up her phone with shaking hands and walked onto the balcony, pushing open the glass door as if she needed distance from their voices still echoing in her mind. The Denver air was cold enough to bite at her skin, but it grounded her. She stepped into the night and closed her eyes, letting the truth hit her with the kind of clarity that only comes when illusions shatter completely. They weren't struggling. They weren't drowning. They weren't desperate. They were planning. And she had been financing the plan. Suddenly her phone buzzed again. One sharp vibration, just like the one that opened this chapter of her life. She looked down. Another text. From Harold. I disown you. Pause. Breath. A truth settling in. As I stood there, replaying their laughter in my mind, my phone buzzed one more time. It was my father's text. I disown you. In that moment I understood. They weren't punishing me. They were trying to cut me off before I could confront them. They thought they were in control. But they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. Because I wasn't part of their family. I was part of their budget. And budgets can be cut. Silence filled Bonnie's apartment that night. Not the suffocating silence of punishment she'd grown up with, but a calm, spacious quiet. A silence she controlled. A silence she chose. It wrapped around her like armor instead of chains. She sat at her dining table, opened her laptop, and logged into her banking portal with the same professional detachment she used for audits at work. No shaking hands. No tears. No hesitation. Just clarity. The numbers loaded slowly, row by row, the list of automated payments stretching down her screen like a record of every time she'd bent herself out of shape to keep them afloat. She started with the biggest one, the mortgage. 48 months. A 4-year history of her funding a home where she was barely tolerated. With a single click, she cancelled the recurring transfer. Confirmation box popped up. Are you sure you want to stop this payment? Yes. She was. Next came the utilities, gas, electric, internet, water. She cancelled them one by one, watching each scheduled charge disappear from her queue until the list looked unfamiliar, almost empty. Then the emergency fund. The just-in-case account she'd created for them that had turned into a bottomless pit. Cancel. Then Evan's payments. His credit card. His settlement fees. The installments he'd sworn he would pay back someday. Though everyone knew he wouldn't cancel. 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 The screen felt cleaner each time she removed another thread tying her life to theirs. When she was done, she opened a blank document and titled it simply. Payments.no flourish. No emotion. Just the truth. She began typing, line by line, a cold, factual ledger of the last 4 years. Date, amount, description, category, receiver, mortgage. $2,618. Utilities. $361. Car repair. $1,200. Evans DUI attorney. $4,000. Medical emergency. $780 and on. Hundreds of entries, each one a reminder of how thoroughly they had used her. Her phone buzzed twice. A text from Evan. Hey, can you send $200 real quick? It's urgent. Then another. Bonnie? She didn't respond. She didn't even open them. Marilyn tried next. Call me. Now. Delete. She kept typing by the time she finished. It was almost 2 a.m., and her apartment still held that quiet, steady peace. She saved the document, closed her laptop, and went to bed without dreams. The next morning, her phone lit up at 7:14 a.m. Payment failed. Glendale Mortgage. Payment failed. City Utilities. Payment failed. Internet services notifications poured in like falling dominoes, each one a string snapping, each one a piece of her spine straightening. Then the calls started. Evan. Bon. This isn't funny. Answer the phone. Harold. Missed call. Missed call. Missed call. She stepped onto her balcony, the early Denver air brushing her skin, and for the first time in her life, she felt something powerful. Agency. She wasn't falling apart, they were, and suddenly, it made perfect sense. Harold thought disowning her would weaken her. But she had been the one holding everything together. Within 48 hours, the panic began. And when it did, I realized something even I hadn't fully anticipated. I wasn't just cutting off their money. I was exposing an entire system of control that went far deeper than I ever imagined. The panic didn't build slowly. It hit all at once. At 9:03 a.m., Bonnie's phone lit up with Marilyn's name. She let it ring twice before answering. Marilyn didn't bother with a greeting. What did you do? Fix it. Fix it right now. Her voice was shrill, frantic. Nothing like the polished, poised woman who always pretended everything was fine. This was the real Marilyn, terrified of losing comfort, control, and the image she curated like a religion. Bonnie remained seated at her kitchen counter, sipping her coffee. "You'll need to contact Harold's lawyer," she said evenly. "I'm no longer involved." A beat of stunned silence. "Don't play games with me, Bonnie. The mortgage bounced. The utilities, everything. Your father is furious." Bonnie didn't raise her voice. "Then he can speak to the lawyer he told me to contact. I'm following instructions." She ended the call. That's when the floodgates opened. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Texts stacking like falling bricks. "Marilyn, how could you do this to your family? After everything we've done for you. We needed you." Then came the shift, classic manipulation. "Please. We're scared. Just send one payment." Bonnie muted the thread. Evan was next. No hesitation, no subtlety. "You're pathetic. Dad's blood pressure spiked because of you. Where's the money, Bonnie? This is why everyone laughs at you." Each message was a punch thrown in the dark, hoping one would land. She didn't open a single one, and then there was Harold and no calls. No text. No emails. His silence was louder than the chaos, more calculated than the threats. Bonnie knew that silence. It was the silence of someone formulating a planned by noon. A new number called her. A man introduced himself as a representative of Harold Hale, claiming Bonnie was in violation of a family support agreement. His tone was officious, practiced, almost. She could hear the cracks. She forwarded the voicemail to her actual lawyer, Liam, who called back laughing so hard he had to pause to catch his breath. "Bonnie, this isn't even a real legal claim. I've seen kindergartners put together more coherent threats." She exhaled for what felt like the first time that day. But then her voice dropped, steady but heavy with something deeper. "Liam, I think Harold might be mismanaging money. Maybe more than I realized." There was a pause on his end. No laughter now. "How do you know?" She told him about the video. The fake emergencies. The shifting stories. The constant financial chaos that made no actual sense. Liam's tone changed. Sharp, alert. "Then we need to dig deeper. Send me everything." And Bonnie realized. This was no longer about a bounced mortgage. It was about a pattern, a system, a cover-up. What started as protecting myself from financial abuse was about to uncover something far darker. Because when I started pulling the thread on Harold's community fund, I discovered he wasn't just manipulating me. He'd been stealing from everyone. And the truth was about to destroy him. The investigation took a week. 7 days of spreadsheets, late-night emails, and the kind of forensic analysis Bonnie normally reserved for corporate audits. Except this time, the numbers weren't on a stranger's balance sheet. They were her father's. Every evening after work, she sat at her dining table with her laptop, cross-checking dates, flagging transactions, pulling public filings from the community fund Harold chaired. She created color-coded tabs, compared withdrawals, matched inconsistencies. Patterns began to emerge. Ugly patterns. Nearly every month for the last 3 years, Harold had withdrawn large sums from the community improvement account. Not enough to trigger automatic alerts, but enough to raise suspicion. Each withdrawal was marked with vague descriptions. Vendor reimbursement. Miscellaneous. Expense. Event coordination. But Bonnie checked the event calendars. The fund's website. Vendor listings. Public records. Those events never happened. Those vendors didn't exist. The money, tens of thousands of dollars, simply disappeared. She sat back in her chair, heart hammering. He wasn't just lying to her. He wasn't just manipulating his family, he was embezzling from the entire community. On the 4th night of digging, her phone rang at 11:47 p.m. She almost didn't answer, until she saw the name, Mia. Her cousin. Quiet one. The one who always avoided family gatherings. Bonnie picked up. "Mia. Are you okay?" Silence. A shaky inhale. Then, "I heard what happened. And I need to tell you something." Her voice trembled so badly the words cracked. Mia told her everything, how at 17. Harold cornered her after a holiday dinner. Hands where they shouldn't have been, breath thick with whiskey, voice slurring threats disguised as compliments. How she ran to Marilyn for help, sobbing. and how Marilyn merely pressed her lips together and said, "Don't make trouble." Bonnie felt her stomach twist. Her hands went cold. Mia continued. Years of silence forced by shame, fear, and the knowledge that no one would believe her over Harold, the pillar of the community. By the time the call ended, Bonnie's entire belief system had splintered. Harold wasn't just manipulative. He wasn't just financially abusive. He was dangerous. 3 days later, another call came. This time from Dana, her mother's best friend, a woman who had known Bonnie since she was in diapers. Dana didn't hesitate. "I heard you cut ties. Bonnie. Sweetheart. I should have told you this sooner." What came next reshaped everything she knew about her childhood. Harold controlled her mother's finances completely. He tracked every dollar she spent, questioned every friend she saw, dictated what jobs she was allowed to take. He drained her, slowly, methodically, until she was a shadow of herself. Dana's voice shook. "Your mom didn't leave because she stopped loving you. She left because she couldn't survive him. And she thought staying would ruin you too." Bonnie pressed a hand to her mouth, tears stinging. Not grief, but recognition. This wasn't family dysfunction. This wasn't chaos. This wasn't a flawed man doing his best. It was a system, a design. A pattern of control that stretched across decades, across women, across generations. But Bonnie wasn't trapped in it. Not anymore. For the first time, she felt clarity sharpen inside her like steel. She was not the next victim. She was the break in the pattern. Armed with this truth, I knew the final confrontation was coming. And when Harold showed up at my door, desperate and broken, I was ready to face him. Not as his daughter, not as his ATM, but as the person who was finally going to hold him accountable. It happened on a Thursday evening, just as the sun was setting. The sky outside Bonnie's window glowed gold, warm and soft, the kind of light that makes the world look gentler than it is. Then came the sound that shattered the quiet. 3 heavy knocks, not polite. Not hesitant. Heavy. Insistent. Bonnie stood up slowly and walked to the door, already knowing who it was when she opened it. Harold stood there. Barely recognizable, his face looked gray, sunken in, like panic had aged him 10 years. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes red, his hands trembling at his sides. "Bonnie," his voice cracked. "Please. You have to help me. You can fix this. You're the auditor." There it was, his first manipulation. Wrapped in desperation, but manipulation all the same. Bonnie didn't step aside. She didn't invite him in. He took a shaky breath. "You're my daughter." The last card he had. The one he believed would work no matter how deeply he hurt her. Silence filled the hallway. Thick, heavy, waiting. Bonnie reached behind her and pulled out a single paper she had prepared hours earlier. A summary of the flagged transactions. Amounts, false entries, withdrawals, evidence. She held it out. Harold stared at it before taking it with unsteady fingers. His eyes scanned the page, his breath hitching when he realized exactly what it was, a map of his own destruction. His hands shook harder. Then he looked up, horror and rage mixing in his expression. "You did this," he whispered, voice breaking. Bonnie met his eyes without flinching. "No," she said softly. "You did." His face twisted and his voice rose, not strong but desperate. "You owe me," he choked out. "After everything I sacrificed for you." Bonnie cut him off, her voice steady, almost gentle. "I don't owe you anything. And you disowned me. Remember." The words hit him like a physical blow. His mouth opened but nothing came out at first. Finally, broken, pleading. "I didn't mean," Bonnie shook her head. "That's the problem," she said. "You never do." His eyes filled with something she had never seen from him before. Fear. Not of losing a daughter, but of losing the person who held his entire world together. Bonnie stepped back and placed her hand on the door. Harold reached out weakly, as if trying to grab onto the air between them. But the door closed before he could speak. A soft, final click. On the other side, she heard it. A choked, broken gasp. Harold collapsing under the weight of a system he built and expected her to carry forever. But she wasn't carrying it anymore. That door closing was the sound of an entire empire crumbling. And what happened next proved that I wasn't destroying a family. I was simply removing myself from a structure that was built on my exploitation. It started faster than anyone expected. Within a week, the Community Funds Board launched an internal review. Quietly at first, the way organizations handle things when they hope the storm will pass without leaving debris. But storms built on decades of arrogance don't pass. They gather. They multiply. Harold's name, once spoken with respect, began to shift in tone. It went from trusted to questioned, then from questioned to avoided. The board meetings stretched longer, the statements became colder, and the once subtle glances people exchanged behind his back turned into open, unfiltered accusations. And then came the questions he couldn't control. People wanted to know why the fund's numbers didn't match the public reports. Why donations never reached certain programs. Why withdrawals were tied to personal accounts. Each question peeled back another layer of the man he pretended to be. Evan tried to defend him online. For 3 days straight, he flooded community pages with long paragraphs insisting Harold was being targeted, misunderstood, framed. But every attempt to shield him only drew more attention. Screenshots spread. Comment threads grew like wildfire. People recognized Evan's name, remembered his reputation, remembered the arrogance he inherited. The defense cracked, and so did his credibility. Meanwhile, the Glendale house, the crown jewel Harold flaunted every chance he got, fell under foreclosure review. The bank didn't need long. Without Bonnie's payments quietly holding it up, the collapse was instant. The house had never belonged to Harold's good planning or financial genius. It had belonged to Bonnie's exhausted generosity. And she wasn't giving anymore. While Harold scrambled, panicked, and blamed everyone but himself, Bonnie's life shifted in the opposite direction. At work, her boss pulled her aside. Not because of the drama, but because of her performance through it. She was focused, clear, decisive. She didn't waver even as her world changed shape. Her promotion came with a new title, but more importantly, with recognition. The kind she had spent years waiting for but had never demanded. For the first time in her adult life, she wasn't holding someone else's world together. She was building her own as Harold's world burned down around him. Mine was finally being built up. But the most profound change wasn't external. It was what I discovered standing on my balcony, looking out at Denver's lights one quiet evening. It happened on a Thursday night, long after the noise had settled and the city had slipped into its softer hour. Bonnie stood on her Denver balcony, the cold railing beneath her palms and the skyline stretched out in a quiet glow. Buildings shimmered like they were breathing. Cars moved like slow pulses of light. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't bracing for something to fall apart. She felt it before she understood it. Peace. Not the kind she used to buy with emotional labor, apologies, or financial rescue missions. Not the kind she earned by shrinking herself, smoothing over problems, or sacrificing pieces of her own future just to keep someone else's present intact. This peace didn't cost her anything. She didn't have to pay for it. The realization hit softly but deeply. The kind of truth that rearranges everything inside you without asking for permission. Family, she realized, had never been about blood. Blood had only tied her to people who took. What defined family, real family, was how they made you feel. Whether they respected you. Whether they showed up without expecting you to crumble so they could stand taller. Walking away from Harold wasn't selfish. It was survival. Setting boundaries wasn't cruelty. It was the beginning of freedom. For years she had carried a weight so heavy she assumed it was permanent. A burden disguised as duty, loyalty, daughterhood. Standing there above the city, she felt that weight lower to the ground, piece by piece, until it finally disappeared. She wasn't shrinking anymore. She wasn't dimming herself to fit their comfort. She wasn't apologizing for choosing her own life. And the silence no longer felt like punishment, felt like control. Her controlled in the absence of manipulation, guilt, and constant emotional drain. Her life didn't feel empty. It felt open, wide open. My story isn't unique. It's just uncomfortably honest. And if any part of it resonated with you, I need you to hear this final truth. Wherever this story finds you, I want you to know one thing. If you see yourself in any part of it, you are not wrong. If you've carried more than your share, financially, emotionally, or mentally, it is not weakness to finally put it down. You do not have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Financial abuse is real. Emotional manipulation is real. Family exploitation is real. And if you've been the one holding it all together while being treated like you are never enough, I see you. You are not failing by walking away. You are choosing yourself. You are reclaiming the energy, the clarity, and the peace that has been yours all along. There's a difference between helping and being used. Your life should not be smaller so theirs can be bigger. You deserve relationships where your value isn't measured in what you provide, where your worth isn't defined by sacrifices no one acknowledges. Boundaries are not cruelty, they are freedom. Saying no is not surrender. It is the first honest thing you've said in a long time. Walking away from toxicity isn't giving up, it's courage. It is the quiet dismantling of a structure that never deserved your loyalty in the first place. It is the space to breathe, to grow, to finally stand unburdened by manipulation and guilt. And yes, it can feel terrifying. But it is also profoundly liberating. If you've ever been the family scapegoat, the reliable one, the ATM, the one who holds everything together while being treated like you're never enough, drop a comment below. Share your story. You're not alone, and your experience matters. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because I share real stories about toxic family dynamics, financial abuse, and what it really takes to break free from manipulation. Your next chapter starts when you finally stop writing theirs. And remember, saying no to people who've only valued you for what you give them isn't cruelty. It's the first honest thing you've ever said. Now go write your okay, and close the door on what's been holding you back.